Hi friends, Kevin sir back again from My Guru. Now, there's a beautiful chapter about a bond between a human and an animal. In ninth standard, when you open the book Beehive, you come across a chapter that is known as The Bond of Love, written by Kenneth Anderson. It's a story about a sloth bear. They're huge, yes, but the cubs are quite cuddly and lovable. It all starts during a hunt in Mysore, and then the story goes on to Bangalore. A third person arrives in the scene, that is, the wife of the hunter or the narrator. And then comes the beautiful story of a bonding between a man, a human, and an animal. So let's start it. In the first stanza, you'll see the first paragraph goes as, I'll begin with Bruno, my wife's pet sloth bear. I got him for her by accident. He says that he actually got a sloth bear, a pet sloth bear for his wife, but that all occurred due to an accident. Now let's see what accident it was. 2 years ago, we were passing through the sugarcane fields near Mysore. People were driving away the wild pigs from the fields by shooting at them. Some were shot and some escaped. We thought that everything was over when suddenly a black sloth bear came out panting in the hot sun. Now, the narrator here says that they actually were in the vicinity of a city known as Mysore. They were around the sugarcane fields when they actually came to know that there were some wild pigs irritating the cultivators and destroying the crops. They all went there. People along with them went. They tried to go ahead and kill the wild boars, the pigs. And during that moment, a sloth bear, a brown sloth bear, came out. It was panting as if it had ran its heart out. Now, I will not shoot a sloth bear wantonly, but unfortunately for the poor beast, one of my companions did not feel the way about it and promptly shot the bear on the spot. The narrator here says that he never had a heart or mind to go ahead and shoot a black sloth bear. But one of his colleagues or partners or hunter, he did not think so. He went ahead and shot the bear dead at the spot. As we watched the fallen animal, we were surprised to see that the black fur on its back moved and left the prostrate body. Then we saw it was a baby bear that had been riding on its mother's back when the sudden shot had killed her. The little creature ran around its prostrate parent, making a pitiful noise. Suddenly, the group, the hunting team, realized that something was moving on the dead body of the bear. Before they could imagine or jump to a conclusion, they came to see a little bear cub just falling off from the bear's body. It seemed that they had shot a mama bear, a female bear, and the cub had clung to his mother's body. And when he saw his mother fall down, he just started crawling around the body, making some pitiful cries or noises. I ran up to it to attempt a capture. It scooted into the sugarcane field. Following it with my companions, I was at last able to grab it by the scruff of its neck, while it snapped and tried to scratch me with its long hooked claws. The hunter here, the narrator here, tried to go ahead and run for the baby bear, but it happened so that when they tried to go ahead and run for it, the baby bear tried to go ahead and seek captivity. He tried to run away from them. Finally, the narrator is able to grab him by holding up his neck. It's the scruff, that is the back part of the neck. He just held him, and the baby bear, the cub, futilely tried to go ahead and get away from the clutches by just scratching the narrator, but he couldn't do that. We put it in one of the gunny bags we had brought, and when I got back to Bangalore, I duly presented it to my wife. She was delighted. She at once put a colored ribbon round its neck, and after discovering the cub was a boy, she christened it Bruno. The narrator then grabbed the cub, put him into a gunny bag, and took him to Bangalore. He presented the cub, the baby bear, to his wife. Wife was delighted. Perhaps the narrator did not have kids. The wife was delighted, and when she came to know it was a male, it was a boy, she even christened him. She named him Bruno. Bruno soon took to drinking milk from a bottle. It was but a step further, and within a few days he started eating and drinking everything else. And everything is the right word, for he ate porridge made from any ingredients, vegetables, fruits, nuts, meat, especially pork, curry and rice regardless of condiments and chilies, breads, eggs, chocolate, sweets, pudding, ice cream, etc., etc., etc. As for drink, milk, tea, coffee, lime juice, aerated water, buttermilk, beer, alcoholic, liquor, and in fact anything liquid, it all went down with relish. Here the narrator goes ahead and informs us that once Bruno got accustomed to the house, he started living his life. But it had a cost. Bruno had an insatiable hunger. Anything that came across, he ate it. Anything edible. May it be porridges, may it be anything. Even the porridges mixed with fruits, vegetables, or all sort of assortments. Even the liquids it had. Milk, beer, water. In fact, alcoholic drinks as well. So the narrator here informs us that it was anything that was liquid was gulpable by Bruno. Sounds dangerous, guys. Now, the bear became very attached to our two Alsatian dogs and to all the children of the tenants living in our bungalow. He was left quite free in his younger days and spent his time in playing, running into the kitchen and going to sleep in our beds. The bear now, the narrator says, got quite accustomed with the surroundings. He started gelling up with two Alsatian bred dogs. Alsatian is a breed. Alsatian breed dogs of the narrator had a gala time. Even when he was young, he used to spend a lot of time playing in the garden, in the courtyard, and even going up and having a nap in the beds of the narrator. One day, an accident befell him. I put on poison, that is barium carbonate, to kill the rats and mice that had got into my library. Bruno entered the library as often he did, and he ate some of the poison. Paralysis set into the extent that he could not stand on his feet. But he dragged himself on his stump to my wife, who called me. I guessed what had happened. Off I rushed in the car to the vet's residence. A case of poisoning, tame bear, barium carbonate, what to do? Now, one day, due to his insatiable thirst for any liquid that's available, Bruno encountered a problem. The narrator had kept some rat poison to kill the rodents that had got into his library. Bruno, as usual, roamed around the house. Once he got into the library, he went ahead and gulped it all. He drank the poison. He couldn't stand anymore. He just slouched, but still he dragged himself to the narrator's wife. Narrator's wife panicked and immediately called him up. Narrator rushed Bruno to a vet, informing him about what had happened. Out came his medical books, and a feverish reference in index began. What poison did you say, sir? Barium carbonate. Yes, barium salts are barium carbonate. Symptoms, paralysis, treatment, injections of... Just a minute, sir. I'll bring my syringe and the medicine. A dash back to the car, Bruno still floundering about on his stumps, but clearly weakening rapidly, some vomiting, heavy breathing with heavy flanks and gaping mouth. The doctor seemed to be unaware of the immediate treatment. He just opened his reference book and started a long search for the treatment. Once he came to know about the exact treatment, he knew which injections had to be injected into Bruno. Whereas Bruno lay in the car, all paralyzed, panicking, sweating, vomiting around, looking more weak, and his mouth lay open. Hold him, everybody. In goes the hypodermic. Bruno squeals. 10 cc of the antidote enters his system without a drop being wasted. 10 minutes later, conditions unchanged. Another 10 cc injected. 10 minutes later, breathing less stertorous. Bruno can move his arms and leg a little, although he cannot stand yet. 30 minutes later, Bruno gets up and has a great feed. He looks at us disdainfully, as much as to say, "What's barium carbonate to a big black bear like me?" Bruno is still eating. Now, once the doctor got the treatment, he immediately rushed to get hypodermic. That's a drug. It's an antidote, anti-venom basically. What happened? The doctor rushed and injected 10 cc of anti-venom or the antidote into Bruno. There was no change. After 10 minutes, again another 10 cc. Cc is a unit that is calculated in injections, my friends. Another 10 cc was injected into Bruno. Still there was no change. Things got a bit weird. But 30 minutes later, Bruno started recovering. He recovered and still couldn't stand, but still he was well recovered. He had a great feed since he had all empty stomach, had vomited and done all stuff. So what happened was he was feeling hungry. It seemed that he was hungry, so he was fed. And then he stood up as if he was mocking everybody else by saying, "What can rat poison do to a big bear like me?" Now this is really hilarious. Another time, he found nearly 1 gallon of old engine oil, which I had drained from the sump of Studbaker and was keeping as a weapon against the inroads of termites. He promptly drank the lot, but it had no ill effects whatever. Another incident narrated by the narrator here says that one fine day, again due to his insatiable thirst, Bruno went ahead and drank almost a gallon of old used engine oil that the narrator had taken out of his vehicle and stored it to use as a repellent for the termites. Bruno just went ahead and drank it all. And after that, he didn't show a sign of pain or distress. He just gulped it all. The months rolled on and Bruno had grown many times the size he was when he came. He had equaled the Alsatians in height and had even outgrown them, but was just as sweet, just as mischievous, just as playful, as he was very fond of us. Above all, he loved my wife and she loved him too. Now, as the months passed by, as the days went on, Bruno grew. He actually outgrew the 2 Alsatian dogs who lived as pet in the narrator's house. It happened so that Bruno now got more attached to the wife of narrator. She had changed his name from Bruno to Baba, a Hindustani word signifying small boy, and he could do few tricks too. At the command "Baba wrestle" or "Baba box," he vigorously tackled anyone who came forward for a rough and tumble. Give him a stick and say "Baba, hold gun," and he pointed the stick at you. Ask him "Baba, where's baby?" and he immediately produced and cradled affectionately a stump of wood which he had carefully concealed in his straw bed. Because of the tenant's children, poor Bruno or Baba had to be kept chained most of the time. There was a change. Bruno now was renamed Baba by narrator's wife. Baba is actually an Indian name, a Hindustani name, given to the beloved son, usually by mothers. It happens so that Baba now had outgrown everyone. He started going ahead and obeying the commands. For instance, when he was said, Baba, box, or Baba, wrestle, he used to go ahead and grab anyone in front of him to go for a rumble and tumble around. Then, whenever he used to say, Baba, shoot, he used to go ahead and grab a stump of wood that he used to use as a rifle or a gun that he had concealed in his straw bed. And when he was said, Baba, where's baby? He went ahead and brought another stump of wood that he had close and took it in his arms affectionately, as if showing he's caring for a baby. But the problem was, Baba had to be chained all the times because the narrator had a few tenants and they had kids. Then my son and I advised my wife. Here it's revealed that the narrator had a kid and it was a son. So, the son and the dad, the narrator, they advised his wife something since Baba was growing. My friends advised her too. Even the friends went ahead and advised to give Baba to the zoo at Mysore. To go ahead and give up Baba to a local zoo in Mysore. He was getting too big to keep at home. After some weeks of such advice, she at last consented. Hastily, and before she could change her mind, a letter was written to the curator of the zoo. Did he want a tame bear for his collection? He replied, yes. The zoo sent a cage from Mysore in a lorry, a distance of 87 miles, and Baba was packed off. They had to go ahead and, convince the wife for a long time to give Baba up. One fine day, after a long wait, the wife finally consented. And not waiting for a second opinion, the letter was written by the narrator to the curator of the zoo in Mysore, and it was asked to the curator that if he would like to go ahead and have a pet bear as an exhibit in the zoo. Immediately, there was a yes from the curator, and a cage was sent in a lorry, and Baba was packed and sent off. We all missed him greatly, but in a sense we were relieved. My wife was inconsolable. She wept and fretted. For the first few days she would not eat a thing. Then she wrote a number of letters to the curator. How was Baba? Back came the replies, well, but fretting, he refuses food too. Final nail in the coffin, my guys. Wife had a pretty bad time. The narrator's wife had a pretty bad time trying to get herself accustomed to a house without Baba. In fact, the whole family was missing him, but somehow the men in the family were all relieved that Baba is now at a better place. Wife, mother, she acted as a mother, couldn't console herself. She stopped eating food. And then finally she wrote letters to the curator of the zoo about the whereabouts and the health of Baba. And a jolt came back. She came to know through a letter that even Baba would not eat food and fret the whole day. After that, friends visiting Mysore were begged to make a point of going to the zoo and seeing how Baba was getting along. They reported that he was well but looked very thin and said, all the keepers at the zoo said he was fretting. For 3 months, I managed to restrain my wife from visiting Mysore. Then she said, one day I must see Baba. Either you take me by car or I will go myself by bus or train. So I took a car. Husbands. It happens so that once the letter arrived, the narrator's wife panicked even more. She went ahead and took a chance to ask narrator's friends who were visiting Mysore to visit Mysore just for a day and just get the whereabouts of Baba, about his well-being. They informed that Baba was better, but he had grown thin. That means he wasn't eating food. One fine day, the wife finally, after making many requests to the narrator, said that she would be going to Mysore to visit Baba. Either the narrator would take her by car or she would try her some own conveyance, that is either by a bus or by a train. What could have the narrator done? He picked up his car and took the wife to Mysore. Friends had conjectured that the bear would not recognize her. I had thought so too. But while she was yet some yards from his cage, Baba saw her and recognized her. He howled with happiness. She ran up to him, petted him through the bars, and he stood on his head in delight. People had speculated, even the friends of narrator had speculated, that Baba would now be going ahead and forgetting about the narrator's wife and so on. There were many speculations made, but they all were proved wrong. It happened so that when the narrator's wife was at a distance of few yards from the cage, Baba immediately recognized her and started frantically jumping around, howling around as if enjoying, as if met a long lost friend or a relative. So this was the reunion. For the next 3 hours, she would not leave that cage. She gave him tea, lemonade, cakes, ice cream, and whatnot. Then closing time came, and we had to leave. My wife cried bitterly. Baba cried bitterly. Even the hardened curator and the keepers felt depressed. As for me, I had reconciled myself to what I knew was going to happen next. Sad. It happened so that the whole incident was lasted for 3 hours and more. And finally the closing time of the zoo came. In the meanwhile, Mrs. Narrator, that is the narrator's wife, had gone ahead and offered Baba all sort of drinks. She gave him cakes, lemonades, tea, ice creams, and many more things. And when the curator came and informed about the closing time, and it was the time to leave, the wife started crying bitterly. She couldn't hold her emotions inside. Same thing amazingly happened to the bear. He too started crying. This incident even melted the hearts of the hard-hearted curator and the various zookeepers. As for the narrator, he knew what was going to be next. Perhaps the demand that the wife was going to make. "Oh, please, sir," she asked the curator, "may I have my Baba back?" Hesitantly he answered, "Madam, he belongs to the zoo and is government property now. I cannot give you government property. But if my boss, the superintendent, at Bangalore agrees, certainly you may have him back." The narrator knew what's going to come next. As he knew, the wife uttered the words to the curator about asking Baba back from the zoo. She begged him, but the narrator said that since Baba is now an exhibit in the zoo, he is a government property and the government property cannot be just given away. But there was a condition. If the superintendent at Bangalore agrees to go ahead and give Baba back, there could something be done. There followed the return journey to Bangalore and a visit to the superintendent's bungalow. A tearful pleading, Baba and I both fretting for each other. "Will you please give him back to me? He wasn't a kind-hearted man and consented. He was a kind-hearted man and consented, I'm sorry. Not only that, but he wrote the curator telling him to lend us a cage for transporting the bear to Bangalore." The wife literally cried her heart out in front of the superintendent in Bangalore once they were back. The superintendent was a kind-hearted guy. He felt the pain, he felt the story said by wife that me and Baba, we both are fretting and sobbing for each other. We can't live away from each other. Please get him back for me. In fact, the superintendent was so generous to write a letter to the curator of the zoo to go ahead and get a cage arranged for transporting Baba back. Back we went to Mysore again, armed with the superintendent's letter. Baba was driven into a small cage and hoisted on the top of the car. The cage was tied securely, and a slow and careful return journey to Bangalore was accomplished. Now it started. Once they got the letter from the superintendent, they went back to the zoo in Mysore. And then the journey of bringing Baba back started. Baba was actually fastened. He was kept in a cage, and the cage was fastened atop the car, and Baba was brought back. Once home, a squad of coolies were engaged for special work in our compound. An island was made for Baba. It was 20 feet long and 15 feet wide, and was surrounded by a dry pit or moat, 6 feet wide and 7 feet deep. A wooden box had once housed fowls. That once housed fowls was brought and put on island for Baba to sleep at night. Straw was placed inside to keep him warm, and his baby. The gnarled stump along with his gun, the piece of bamboo, both of which had been sentimentally preserved since he had been sent away to the zoo, were put back for him to play with. Once Baba was brought back, there was a team of workers working in the courtyard of the narrator. The narrator got a small island built for Baba. It was secured by all sides. It was deep. It had a pond-like structure. There was an island. It had water. And in the middle of the island, there was a wooden plank placed in which Baba could take rest. And his two most precious valuables, the bamboo gun and the wooden slump, that is the baby, that had been carefully and sentimentally preserved by the narrator's wife, had been kept back in for Baba to enjoy. In a few days, the coolies hoisted the cage onto the island, and Baba was released. He was delighted, standing on his hind legs. He pointed his gun and cradled his baby. Baba spent hours sitting on a chair there while he sat on a lap. He was 15 months old and pretty heavy too. Now, Baba had grown 15 months old. It happened so that once the cage, the place was ready, Baba was sent in there. Baba had a look at his bamboo gun and slump baby and felt delighted. He was literally roaming off, rolling head over heels. And the narrator's wife started sitting there with Baba in her lap. But since he was 15 months old now, he was quite heavy. The way my wife reaches the island and leaves it is interesting. I've tied a rope onto the overhanging branch of the mango tree with a loop at its end. Putting one foot in the loop, she kicks off with the other to bridge the 6-foot gap that constitutes the width of the surrounding pit. The return journey is made the same way. But who can say now that a sloth bear has no sense of affection, no memory, and no individual characteristics? The way narrator's wife approaches Baba is quite emancipating. She actually delivers a feat every time she visits Baba. She has to place a foot in a loop of a rope, and then just go sliding into the vicinity, have some good time with Baba, feed him, and then in the same way she has to just take away back. Everything is fine, but one thing is most realized now. No one else, according to the narrator, can say that a sloth bear does not have emotions. He does not have his thoughts. He does not have his personal characteristics. So my friends, here the chapter ends. I hope you have enjoyed it. Still, if there are any doubts, please go ahead and comment below. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.